Welcome back to another episode of The Road Chose Me. On today's episode, we're going to pick up right where we left off, talking about extortion, corruption, bribery, and how to deal with it and avoid paying. And there have been a lot of comments around the internet, so I have a lot of new stuff to talk about. So without wasting any more time, let's dive right in and get to everything that you want to know about. There've been a ton of comments asking me, how can I speak so authoritatively? And first of all, let me say, what I'm talking about, it isn't just based on my experience dealing with well over 500 extortion attempts all the way through Latin America and all the way around Africa. But it turns out that extortion and bribery, it's another one of those topics that overlanders always talk about. So whenever you get into a campground, if there's someone else there, pretty quickly we talk about money and then we talk about extortion. So the advice that I'm giving here and the tactics that I've come up with, these are things that I've gleaned from other people over the years as well. And this is from talking to hundreds and hundreds of other people who've gone through this. How do they not pay and how do they deal with these guys? So this experience isn't just from me, it's from hundreds of other people. And this is how real people actually do it when they're out there. This isn't just some idea that I came up with, this is really tested out there on the road. And I can tell you that the very vast majority of people, they don't pay and they work really hard on not paying. And certainly they would never tell you to just travel with a big wad of $20 bills and give them out. That's not the way to go about it. I said in the last video that these guys are never going to stick a gun in your face and ask for money. And immediately in the comments, people said, what do you do if that happens? And I'll be honest with you, that's never happened to me. And it's never happened to any one of the hundreds of overlanders I've spoken to. So first off, it's extremely rare. And I have to say, if that happens, it's not going to be the military and police because they would lose their job. What you're talking about at that point is just robbery from bandits or, bad guys. And how you deal with that obviously is going to be up to you. But personally, I would just pay or I would give them whatever they want because getting shot is not worth it. Like I said, that has never happened. So that's kind of a very oddball, 1 in a million scenario. I also want to say too that none of us are experts when we start. Certainly when I drove into Mexico, I had never experienced this and I was a bit nervous the first few times it happened. And actually at the time, my bad Spanish worked to my advantage and I didn't even realize. By not completely understanding, I couldn't really answer them or have a conversation with them and they got so sick of me, they just sent me away. So what I want to say is, don't feel bad if you're a little bit intimidated or you're a bit worried about this. Even if the first time you wind up paying $5 or $10, that's okay. Don't beat yourself up about it. Learn, get some experience, get a feeling for how it happens, and then be a little bit better at it next time. Everything in overlanding is a big learning process and nobody expects you to be an expert on the first day. Certainly I wasn't, and I know tons of other people that weren't. Don't be afraid, but also, if you really feel unsafe or if the sun's going down and you just really want to get to a campground, feel it out. And if the guy asks you for $20 and you wind up giving him $20 to make him go away, that's not the end of the world. That's okay. Tomorrow can be a new day and you can start again. So there's a few things you can do before you even leave home that are going to really lessen your chances of actually paying these guys when they're trying to extort money out of you. And the first thing is to have all of your paperwork in order. So make sure that you have a valid driver's license. Make sure when you cross the border, you get a temporary import permit from customs. Whatever you do, don't overstay that permit. If it's valid for a month, make sure you leave at the very latest the day before it expires, because once you start getting illegal, anything goes. They could demand $1,000 from you or else they're going to impound your vehicle. And at that point, you don't really have a leg to stand on because now you're the one breaking the law. So stay legal, make sure your paperwork's good. One of the other really common things these corrupt officials will do in some countries is they'll ask you for your driver's license or your vehicle title or registration. They'll take it off you and then basically they'll say straight to your face, when you give me $50, I'll give this back to you. I had exactly that happen in Honduras and I had it happen a couple of times in Africa as well. And so before you even leave home, you can totally negate this one. What I do with my vehicle registration or title is I make a color photocopy and then I get it laminated. And in fact, I make a couple of color photocopies. So whenever they ask for one or whenever I'm crossing a border, I actually give them a copy of my registration or a title if you're from the US. This is my insurance, but same idea. So that way, when they take it off you and they say, I'm gonna keep this, you can just say, okay, sir, no problem. And at that point, they're gonna read your body language and they're gonna tell that you don't even care at all. And you'll see it on their face. They realize, oh, I've got nothing on this guy. And if you don't care about the piece of paper in their hand, they're gonna stop caring about it as well. And every time I've ever done it, they wind up just throwing it back to me and I get to drive on. When it comes to your driver's license, it's a bit trickier than that. Back in 2009, I did just make color photocopies and laminate them. But even then, through Central and South America, all of the police and military, they were wise to that. And every time I gave it to them, they would look at it briefly and immediately say, give me the original, this is a copy. And they knew they'd seen that before. I managed to get away with it back then, but I bet it's a lot different now. So how do you get a second driver's license? Well, my advice, you can take it or leave it. What I do is I go to the place that issues my driver's license and I just say I lost my driver's license. At that point, they're gonna issue you another one for a few bucks. And now you actually have 2 driver's licenses. Now, I don't know if that's technically legal here in Canada to have 2 of them. You know, whoops, I actually found my original one even though I thought I lost it. So I'm pretty careful when I'm in developed countries. I always give the original and the most recent one. But then when I'm in other countries, when I'm in Honduras or the Congo, I can happily give over what is a legit, credit card looking driver's license, but I don't care because I have another one as a backup. So if they tell me they're gonna hold on to it, I say, no problem, man, do whatever you want. And you can really tell they just give up at that point and they'll give it back to you. Also prepare your vehicle. Make sure your tires aren't wildly outside the guards. Don't have a huge big front bumper that pokes out into traffic. Try to make sure your vehicle at least looks legal and looks like a standard, 4-wheel drive or vehicle. You don't want it to look like a moon buggy or a monster truck because that just screams, hey, my vehicle is definitely outside the regulations. Come over here and try to get money out of me. The other thing you can do is these guys on the side of the road, all around the world I've found, they're gonna ask for 3 things that you're supposed to have in your vehicle. So it just makes sense to have them. The first one is a first aid kit. And to be honest, you should have one anyway, so make sure you have a first aid kit. The second one is a safety triangle. So this is the kind of thing you put on the ground, if your vehicle breaks down to alert other drivers that there's danger on the road. Usually, if they ask for one triangle and you show it to them, pretty quickly they're gonna say, show me your second one. You actually have to have 2 in our country. Whether or not that's actually true, who would ever know? I like to carry 2 anyway, because it just makes them leave me alone. Another thing they're often gonna ask for is safety vests. So these are just your bright yellow jackets, that people wear when they're on a construction site. Again, in some countries, you're supposed to have these if your vehicle breaks down. Why not carry them? For a $5 safety vest, it's gonna avoid so much hassle in bribery and extortion. So I personally always carry 1 for every person that's traveling in my vehicle. And then the final thing that they're basically always gonna ask you for is a fire extinguisher. You should definitely have one in your Overland vehicle anyway. Make sure you have a fire extinguisher. Make sure that it's charged to the correct level. If it's got a gauge on it, make sure it's in the green. Otherwise, they'll try and bribe you for that. And if it has any kind of expiry date stamped on it, make sure that it's within its expiry date. Again, you should be doing this anyway, but this is gonna really help you avoid all these extortion attempts. So at tons of roadside checks, they would literally say to me, you have to give me $5 because you don't have a fire extinguisher. I would show it to them and they would say, oh, okay, you have to give me $5 because you don't have a safety triangle. I would show it to them and they would say, oh. So they would try that with the first aid kit and the safety vests, and maybe they'd say something like, your windshield wipers don't work. I would show them that they do work, and then literally the guy would say, all right, go away. So that's how easy it can be to get out of these extortion attempts if you're well prepared and if you've planned ahead. So it's really worth doing. I said in the first video that this extortion stuff is a little bit of social engineering, and sometimes it feels a bit like a game. Something that I realized in Africa is that these guys who are standing on the side of the road, what they want more than anything else is respect. And they want to be seen as like they are the man and everybody respects them, especially the tourist who's passing through their country. So above all else, you really want to show them respect. So even when they're trying to get money out of you and you're not giving it to them, you can still give them respect. You can still shake their hand. You can still say, yes, sir, sorry, sir. And especially if a bit of a crowd gathers, it's really worth thanking them for their time, thanking them for being in their country. All of that kind of stuff make them feel like they are important and they've played a big role in your successful journey. That's going to make them at least feel like, hey, you know, I got some respect today. So that's what they really want more than anything else. As much as they want $10 in their back pocket, they also want you to respect them, especially if you can do that in a crowd. They're going to love that even more because now all the local people will respect them even more. Something I try to remember is to never disagree with them or never set up an argument whereby either they are right and they win or you are right and you win. Because let's be honest, these guys are on a bit of a power trip. Often they have guns, they have the ability to arrest you. If they're really on a power trip, they want to win. They want to be the man. If it's about speed, don't argue about whether or not you are speeding because by definition, they are just going to be right. Just make it difficult to pay them. Like say you don't have any cash, so you need them to write a ticket so you can take it to the bank. So at that point, you're clearly not disagreeing with them. You're respecting them. You can even say, oh, sir, I apologize for speeding in your country. I wasn't paying attention. You're clearly acknowledging that they are correct, but now you're just making it really, really difficult for them to get money out of you. So keep that in mind. Whatever they say to you, if they say, you know, your tires have expired, don't just argue and say, that's BS, you know, that's not a law. You can say, oh, I didn't know that was a law. Could you show me that in the rule book, please? In a sense, you're calling them out, but you're not blatantly doing it and you're not being rude. So that's something I try really hard to do. Agree with them, but make it really hard for them to get money out of you. I just want to end on a positive note. I know people are really scared about this corruption bribery thing, but I want to let you know that it just isn't scary. It's really weird to say it out loud, but I actually started looking forward to interactions with these guys on the side of the road because they were always so different and they were actually kind of funny. It was really interesting to pull up and, you know, say, hello, sir, how are you? And then kind of watch their face and almost anticipate what they were going to ask for. And a couple of times, before they'd even finished saying the word triangle, I actually already had it to show them. And then watching them get shocked, I always found it really fun. And when I was in Guinea, it was amazing. The guy there, it was like he was reading the same script as the guy in Honduras who tried to bribe me nearly 10 years earlier. I want to reassure you, it's not terrifying. You're not going to get thrown in handcuffs. You're not going to have a gun pointed at you. It's going to be some guys on the side of the road who are trying their luck, who are saying, hey, can we get 20 bucks out of this silly foreigner? And then it's up to you to play the game, to make them laugh, to distract them by showing them a map and see if you can get around it and wind up not paying. So above all, don't be intimidated. Just go and have experiences and have a great time. And this kind of thing isn't going to happen every day, so don't be terrified. Going through all the comments online, I've seen a lot of people who have kind of like third-hand or fifth-hand accounts of dealing with extortion, especially in Mexico or, you know, flying into Nicaragua and getting bribed a couple of $100s. And I just want to say, I find it really unfortunate that extortion is one of those things that's really been hyped by Hollywood, by other travelers, you know, by people writing magazine articles who are trying to make their story really gripping. And I feel like the lesson that I learned when I was heading towards Mexico, tons of people were telling me about how dangerous it was. And at some point I had to just say to them, when was the last time you were in Mexico? And it turns out that 99% of people have never been there. So immediately I would kind of discount whatever they were telling me. If someone has been to Mexico and they've been there recently, they're the kind of people you need to seek out and you need to listen to their advice about extortion, about safety, about tons of topics. There are communities of people like me who really have driven the whole Pan American Highway or driven Africa. There's the Pan American Travelers Association on Facebook, there's Expedition Portal, there's tons of communities. and face-to-face meetups too, like Overland Expo. If you go to a show like that, you can sit down with people like me and say, how scary was the extortion? What was the reality of what it was like? And you're going to hear a lot of advice like what I'm telling you. But I just want to say that if you're taking advice from people about what it's going to be like, find people that have really done it. Don't just listen to people who are repeating the bad news and the bad Hollywood stories. Listen to people who've really been there and they've really experienced it. They've got nothing to gain by exaggerating, so they're just going to tell you once and for all the actual truth of what it feels like to deal with extortion. And the reality is, it's so different than the Hollywood hype. So corruption is such a huge topic, and I know lots of people worry about it. That's why I made these two videos, and that's why they both turned out to be so long. I tried to keep them as short as I could, and I hope it's been helpful. Let me know in the comments what you found the most useful. And if you do have more questions, feel free to ask them. I'll either reply in the comments or I'll collect them all up, and at some point in the future, I'll do yet another video about corruption, extortion, and bribery. So in the meantime, if you enjoyed this one, please hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel to make sure you don't miss future updates. And next video is coming, more topics that I know you guys all want to know about for driving around the world. So see you next time on The Road Chose Me.